Well, hello there. Today I'm going to be talking about the organic timeline choice point, which is where we find ourselves right now. So, welcome to my weekly energy report. This week it's the 3rd of April 2023. I'm Karen from karenturpin.com. So, we find ourselves both at a most perilous point in our human journey right now, and also at, in a sense, the most exciting point in our human journey. This divide, often called the bifurcation, is really showing itself very much more clearly on a day-by-day basis. Throughout the last 3 years, we saw elements of it. We saw the juiced people versus the unjuiced people, and that was already starting to create a divide. And that divide, even spread into families. It broke up marriages, quite honestly. It divided whole families based upon those who had chosen to participate in this gene modification program and those who did not. And I'm sorry to keep referring to the last 3 years. It would be nice if we could just let all of that go and move on. In a sense, we can. However, it has set the stage, really, for what's to come next. Even though this whole thing has really been hundreds of years in the making. So let's go back, in fact, to the time of Atlantis, and more particularly to the fall of Atlantis. Now, we were told that that happened due to greed and control and the misuse of technology. And here we are again, once again, facing greed, control, and the misuse of technology, quite honestly, by governments, by the oligarchs, by technocrats, who have literally contaminated every aspect of our life, really. They've contaminated our water, our air, our food, the earth, our land, the oceans, our medicine, our mind, our body, and even our energy field through the use of frequency. To the point, actually, that we may indeed be on a pathway that will repeat that timeline of Atlantis all over again if we don't choose otherwise. And choice here is the key, and it's the point that I'm really trying to make. There is choice to all of this. So you're not necessarily doomed. Let me just put that right out there now. Now, there is a particular power, or like a magnetic pull, that comes through from past lives. As much as I would prefer it not to be so, I have seen evidence in my client sessions of these strong repeating patterns that play out time and time again. I've had experience of it myself, and in fact I gave an example about this in a post that I did on my Facebook page just a few days ago. But this magnetic pull is why we are attracted to certain people again and again. We talk about it as a soul family sometimes. That can have positives and negatives, because many of these past life timelines that we pull in to recreate with certain people, many of them are actually brought through and they're pretty heavy and dark to work through. We have healing to do. There's unhealed wounds and trauma around that. And yes, the empowerment comes afterwards, but sometimes, actually, this is a fact, that sometimes people can't break through the magnetism of a disempowering timeline or a disempowering past life. So, as I say, this is why we attract certain people to us again and again. It's why we are attracted to certain creative endeavors. And it's actually where many of our healing and psychic gifts come from. I've experienced that personally myself. And in fact, the majority of the healing techniques that I use come from skills that I have acquired in past lives. And I've actually been able to bring them through again by re-accessing those memories. Now, we know as well that there was only one Cleopatra. However, hundreds of people all around the world, when they do past life regression, think that they were Cleopatra. Well, clearly that can't be so. But what's happening is that they're tuning in to a collective consciousness memory around that. It may be just as valid in a sense, because there must be some connection with some lineage that's come down, or a vibrational resonance that makes them connect into that. For example, personally, I've never connected into a past life with Cleopatra, and I've done a lot of past life regression, but I guess it's just not my lineage. Some of these past life memories are much closer to us though, like a few generations back even sometimes, and they really are personal memory and verifiable quite often, particularly in the more recent past life regressions. So what happened in Atlantis was horrific to look back on, and I've had many clients in session work with me on past life regression who have been absolutely devastated when they have seen the part that they played in that Atlantis timeline. The ones that have been scientists in labs or technicians implementing some of those creations and enforcing them. Maybe these are some of the nurses and the doctors and the lab technicians that have been active over the last few years with this agenda that they played out. Maybe, we don't know for sure. If so, these people have been recreating a part of that timeline. Now, granted, it may have not actually been uniquely them, but they may have tapped in to a collective consciousness memory. And for some reason, they've been pulled in to recreating that again this time around. And this, of course, involves hundreds of thousands of people all around the world, all participating to enforce a timeline creation in a sense. Now, remember that where you place your attention, you're putting energy there. So you place your attention and off goes that flow of energy into that. So focusing on it, focusing on the face coverings, the things in your arm, the distance you stand from people, the adherence to checking in and out of places, all of that, as well as the constant bombardment of it from TVs and things, all of that is taking up your power, your consciousness power, and you're feeding it. So all of that you've been putting your energy into every time you're thinking about that. I've talked before about checking into the 11 a.m. news to see the latest update and all of that. You're literally plugging into it, breathing air into it. Now, I don't want to keep talking about it, but I kind of feel I have to explain still how the power of our consciousness creates things. So all of that, anyway, you've been putting your energy into, and you've been building consciousness around it, making it happen effectively. Now, what could have happened had you not put energy into it, is that it would have all collapsed. But the point is, we can't go back and change things now. But you have to be aware that where you put your energy, you're actually building consciousness there. And my important point about this is that we are the creators. We are actually the technicians building our new timeline with our consciousness, and more particularly through the choices that we make. Now, I said very early on, in about May 2020, I think it was, that if we stopped feeding energy into that thing that was fairly new at the time back then the whole lot would have collapsed. But people fed that beast, and here we are now, 3 years later, with millions of people all around the world who chose to willingly enter into or onto a transhumanism timeline. Now, with the advancement of artificial intelligence, this is amplified, of course, because they're plugging right into it. So the hardware was installed, the software was boosted, and the artificial intelligence that people are plugging into is the signal instructing the mind and body how it wants you to behave. Don't panic, it's still redeemable through choice, but it may not be forever. And this is precisely why, though, that we see great numbers of people suddenly jumping up in arms all over certain issues. If it seems as if we're going against the narrative that they want it to be so, the minute you say anything about it, they jump up and they're horrified and they're offended and all of this kind of thing. Can you see my dog in the background? He's having a bad dream or something, chasing bunnies. I don't know. He's jumping around over there. Anyway, let me get back to this. Where was I? Checking my notes. I was saying this is exactly why we see so many people up in arms about these narratives that they're trying to push upon people. All that does actually is turn more people off, I think. But anyway, they really are uprising like the mind-controlled sheep that they actually are, sadly. But they're very vicious in their attack. Just like those armed robot dogs that used to only appear in sci-fi movies, but now they're real and they're out in public places in some countries. So what we are looking at, robots coming everywhere, into every shop and into every shopping centre near you, government places, airports, etc. We're looking at the automatrons that flare up, offended about everything that you say. We're looking at transhumanism because they've got the hardware and the software installed in the body now. We are looking at militarized humans. All this stuff, and it's messing around with people's minds, and they're taking hormones and they're doing things to their bodies, and all of that makes it something that is inorganic. And that is the new version of the Atlantis timeline. And that is exactly the point that we find ourselves at now. We even have two very well-known, and I have to say satanic, businessmen. I have to call them that because nothing about them is good. What they are doing and what they have done, particularly instrumentally, inducing people over the last recent years, all of that is actually pure evil. But now they have created lab-grown meat. This is to keep their subjects mind-controlled, genetically modified, and disconnected from God. If you value your soul, never eat that stuff. So we're at a pivotal time in the history of mankind, of humanity, of this planet. And there are two very clear paths to choose from. One will feed the beast, and the other ensures your freedom, your sovereignty, and your connection to God. And it safeguards your soul, basically, through the process of soul embodiment. And I'll talk more about that in the coming weeks. Where we place our attention, energy flows there. So rather than putting all of your attention on men who want the right to wear dresses, let's see this for what it is. Let them choose which timeline they want to be on and let them go down that pathway, because that is their clear choice now. They're choosing that. Just protect the children, for goodness sake. Safeguard the children and keep them on an organic timeline. Don't mess with them. Just keep them as nature intended. When you align your energy, your attention and your focus upon all that is organic, it's very easy to see from that vantage point what is manipulated, what is infiltrated, what is contaminated, mutilated, and completely inorganic. That is the Transhumanism Timeline. And it will create Atlantis all over again for those who choose it. But it doesn't have to be that way, because I have seen a better outcome. I've seen a timeline that is an organic timeline, and I know that it is still available to us now. All is not lost. However, we have to act now. We can't keep lolling around, fence sitting and saying how terrible everything is. Like, now is the time to do your inner work so that you can get soul aligned. Now's the time to face your shadow, to withdraw from negative situations that take you off track, to face yourself and be brutally honest so that you can get onto the right organic pathway and timeline now before it is too late. Because this is the Great Awakening, but you have to participate. If you don't participate with your own soul embodiment process and consciously choose to be actively upon an organic timeline, you can call it an Ascension timeline if you like, but if you don't choose to actually participate in that, you literally will get swept away with that other timeline, the Transhumanism timeline. So people might say, oh, but I understand these other groups of people, they want their expression, they want their voice, and I should support them in that. Well, you can if you want to, but by supporting that, you are choosing that. It's kind of like you can't have both things. The classic example that people often say is like, you can't be a little bit pregnant. You either are it or you're not it. You can't be a little bit. So you either choose the organic timeline and you do everything for your soul embodiment, or if you really want to support these other people, well, then you go that path. But you can't be there and there and there and there and back and forth. It's like decision time, kind of, right? So to be honest, I first began to talk like this to my students about 15 years ago. Poor things. It's way ahead of my time, and no wonder their heads exploded. But some of them kind of got on that vibe with me, and they're still on the same pathway, doing beautifully. Others chose a different pathway. They've been very, very defensive against everything I've ever said or taught. And look, I'm not correct in every single thing I say, because, I'm learning and opening up to more revelation as we go along, which is true for everyone, by the way. So some of them have been very defensive of this transhumanism timeline, and that's fine. They can go that way if they want to. They believed that they needed to be juiced for certain reasons. That's fine. I really don't hold it against them. I really fully accept that everyone must choose for themselves. What is the sad part in all of this is that so many people have been lied to, and they still don't even know what has happened to them. And some of them actually are already lost and mindless. Now, I'm not sure that everyone is redeemable, to be perfectly honest. I guess we'll see that. That's still to play out. It just depends how far down that kind of transhumanism timeline you've already gone. I mean, sometimes there's no way of coming back, If you've gone over the edge of the waterfall, not sure that you can get yourself back up, kind of thing. But anyway, we'll see. I guess that's between them and God. So my advice is, and luckily most of my audience are already awake, and you're kind of onto this with me anyway, aren't you? So my advice is to be very careful about what you align your energy to now, because things are going to roll out really quickly in the coming time. And if you're not paying attention, well, I just don't want you to be swept away somewhere that you didn't really plan on going. Because everyone tries to be nice and supportive and do the right thing. But the point is that some of what people have been doing, which they think is the right thing, is actually not really their soul's choice. And this is what we're talking about here. So if you need some help to get clear and to get up to speed with what's what, then get hold of me, give me a message, DM, because I've got sessions for this to help people understand, what's really going on here. So otherwise, you need to keep on with your inner work. You need to pull back from much of that external stuff and just get inside your own body. Have a look at what's going on enough to know what's coming around the next corner so that you can divert or avoid it. But don't get absorbed into reading the next exciting, juicy thing. I mean, you'll get a dopamine hit there. And if your body is already in trauma, it's almost like you can't pull yourself away. You want to have more and more and more of it, but then you're putting energy into it, right? So you need to unplug from that and come back into a more organic state and connect, do your grounding, connect with the earth, connect with your body, connect with your soul. And really, this soul embodiment process only really happens through that deep healing work of clearing past traumas, etc. I know that doesn't sound exciting and sexy and modern, but it's the truth, and it's definitely where we are right now in this journey. Now, if you took the juice and you're worried about that, the first thing you need to do, in my opinion, is start detoxing. And there are some very specific protocols that can help you with that. Get out of your mind, get your mind out of artificial intelligence enough so that you can find your own self. And that could involve unplugging, from social media and Telegram channels and things like that, so that you've got time in your own body. Turn off your TV, of course, if you haven't already. You also need this mental mind detox, right? Because all of this narrative is coming in. And when we're surrounded and swamped by that, we can't find ourselves. It's like we don't know the contents of our own heart, in a sense. And that's where we really need to get to detox from all of that stuff so that we can make a conscious choice to get on the organic timeline and unplug from what's feeding that other technology. Start doing your inner work. Find some self-worth, some belief in yourself, self-trust. You might need to do some forgiveness work for some of the things that you've done, participated in, and there might be trauma work too. And that's very individual. But most everyone has something that's fragmented them away from their true self, because that's just life. Most of that happened in childhood, but sometimes it can be the choices that we made as an adult as well. Okay, so all of that stuff is going to lead you back towards the organic timeline. It's going to disconnect you from a false timeline, let's say. And we know that there are a lot of false white light timelines out there. There's a lot of fakery in the New Age and spiritual stuff. I've talked about that quite at length before. It is a minefield out there. And the safest thing is to come into yourself and start looking at your own shadow and do that work. No more spiritual bypassing, because it doesn't help you. So I know that doesn't sound sexy and fun, but it's the way to keep your soul intact, quite honestly. And this is a spiritual battle. So I hope that this broadcast, this energy report, gave some positive into this, because I don't see it as all doom and gloom. I honestly don't. I have seen a beautiful organic timeline that we can all align to and with, but it does require doing that inner healing work. So reach out to me for help if you need some. I have private sessions, I have courses, group coaching, I have classes, and I'm going to be doing some classes at the end of this month that I can go into much more depth in those private Zoom classes than I can in an online forum kind of like this. So reach out to me on DMs. You can find more details on my website, which is karenturpin.com. You can ask me questions in the comment box below, but just keep in touch. Don't feel that you are alone in this. There are many, many people waking up at great speed, and that's very exciting to witness. And don't be alone. Nothing is doomed yet, but let's get really active with our soul embodiment process, which is really what it's all about. So I hope that you found that helpful. Keep in touch. I will see you all next week. Bye-bye.